Hey,
All right. Aaron, what is up, dude?
how's it going, man?
Man, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. So stoked. And thank God this finally worked, my man. I appreciate you bearing with me and, the schedule's kind of going back and forth. Thank you much, man. This is so
Sure.
sick.
Yeah, we had a rough time of it for a while.
And it's sometimes that's just kind of how things happen, as far as trying to collaborate, figuring out things with music or trying to figure out different things. But yeah, I really appreciate you jumping on, and as well as the help with getting a track on the Best of the Midwest, which I'm really excited to talk the track with Death Dedication on that as well too. So yeah, to jump off here, my man. Like I messaged you on the side and I kind of mentioned, like, I have had kind of redraft after redraft of trying to, like, make this to where I'm not taking up your whole night, just kind of digging into all this shit. So, for a little bit of a early emphasis, I guess, initially, where are early inspirations for you coming from as far as musical interests and things that are, really that were catching your ear?
So I probably got into like punk around 8th grade, which is like, I guess for me would have been 85, 86. One of my friends had a dubbed copy of Black Flag, Who's Got the 10.5. So that was like a starting off point for me. I didn't get to see any artwork or anything, but I knew that there was something about it that I wanted to go and find more of it. I think after that, it was like going to this record store that was in DeKalb, Illinois. I grew up in a town just south of there called Waterman.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to this Record Revolution and just look for tapes that the covers just looked crazy because I had no reference of what it was. So I think the next thing I got was probably Corrosion of Conformity, Eye for an Eye. And then like Minor Threat, just started buying tapes. And then, yeah, so that was probably the starting point for me.
I love
stuff.
that.
And then reading Thrasher magazine and just like seeing ads for, T-shirts of punk bands, like just the imagery and everything it spoke to me.
Okay. I mean, and did you have skating or did you have BMX or anything like that kind of, went to, not necessarily, I guess, because even for the longest, like, it wasn't necessarily hand in hand with heavy music, but something that was like an energy boost, as far as for going out and doing any of that. Did you partake?
Yeah. I skated until I was like into my late 20s. So starting at like a little kid until then. And then I just stopped. Yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned in two, kind of those earlier days and cover art with that. That's always something, that's been important to me and has always been something that, has kind of either gotten me, gypped me out of money for, records that I thought were awesome, or there's been other times where I'm like, whoa, I'm glad that I got this. How important has that been as far as like for your work, and we're going to kind of touch on this, more so when we get into, specific bands and such, but it's always something, with like, with different things that you're involved with, Repos, Goodbye World, the cover art, and where does that go to you as far as like maybe something that jumps out to you or, kind of sticks out in memory? Yeah, I mean, it's always been something that's been important to me. Is like, even if there's a great record that I don't like the cover, I'll just never listen to it because I don't want to look at it, or I just refuse to acknowledge that it's great. But I did have some like weird mistakes too, like just looking through cassettes when I was a kid. And I don't know anything about this band now. I just remember buying a tape by this band called the Lime Spiders. I don't even know what they sound like, but I remember getting it. The cover looked cool, and Lime Spiders sounds cool. And then I remember putting it on and going, what the fuck? I just wasted $7 or something on this cassette. So yeah, art is definitely important to me. Like, I want something that's like that's visually striking as well as the music being striking.
Okay, and it's funny too. I kind of got into this like little bit of a, not necessarily tangent, but almost this thing the other day where I'd said like there are legitimately records that I love that for whatever reason, it kind of feels like that outside casing or maybe even that like initial like package wrapping or something, where it's like it just bums me out to where like I want to love everything, but like this part kind of blemishes it. And I understand, like, it's more about the art and it's more about the music, as it is that, but it's like it always helps to have something that's just like punching you in the face or something that sticks out, for sure, along with it. So Now, as far as, earlier interests, and maybe not even knowing necessarily the members, but what can you remember as far as maybe picking up on some of these earlier things, maybe even before punk, and hearing, maybe even a drummer that stuck out to you, a band, to where you really heard like, damn, like what are they doing, or how are they making that sound happen?
Okay, so my very first introduction to anything punk was something before I even knew what it was. This was like early 80s probably. And I was visiting my mom out in LA for the summer, and we had a babysitter, my brother and I did, who left like her boombox behind. And there was a cassette that was inside of it. And it reminded me of something that like, I thought that Prince was really cool back then. So I thought that it had something to do with Prince because it was called the Sex Pistols. And I played it, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are they even doing? And it's funny now because that's like pretty much just like, raw rock and roll sounding stuff. But to me then, I was just like, what is going on? I don't even know what they're doing.
Sick. I love that. I mean, and even, kind of to touch a little bit further in with yourself, with vocals, with, the couple of bands there. What about an early vocalist? Somebody that, even the singing or their approach that really, stuck out to you?
So, an old friend of mine, Ebro, made me a mixtape when I was probably around 19 or 20. And, something that really stuck out was Infest. Like he recorded he put 3 Infest songs on there, and like the vocals for Infest, Joe's vocals are just amazing. Always stuck out to me there. That's one thing I can think of.
Totally. I dig that. And I mean, that's sick too. I love hearing, these different things, and I would go on and I would kind of elaborate with that, but I'm going to try to keep on track here so that I'm not keeping this whole thing completely tied up with that. What about as far as, so you kind of mentioning, like these other things, anything with guitar or bass playing, is there any, anybody that kind of pops out, within these times or before, where you're wondering like, how the fuck are they making this sound like this? How are they playing like that?
Yeah, just like the speed of guitar playing and almost any of the stuff, like the Black Flag stuff from Who's Got the 10.5. It was guitar playing that I hadn't heard before. And Corrosion of Conformity, like that stuff was just so fast. Like I remember having like a Walkman and having that cassette in there and just listening to it all the time. And then to one of my friends just being like, who had no interest in punk or anything, just being like, listen to this, and just playing it, because I was just so amazed at how fast it was. And I don't even know, I haven't listened to that album in a long time. I don't know, is it fast still? It just seems so fast when I was like in 8th grade or something.
I mean, it still seems like it, but I guess it just kind of depends on what it's compared to, if you're comparing it to modern day, like black metal or, I mean, there's a lot of variations, to where like you're going back to something like that and it's like, whoa, this is jarring completely. Well, as far as your first show, so you have this interest, how do you end up getting introduced to, finding this live setting to be able to enjoy this?
So I had a friend in high school who was a year older than me, who had older sisters who were into punk. And so I had this job during the summertime that I was like a custodian at the high school. So I would ride my bike and I was just like waxing floors and shit like that. And then after I would finish with work for the day, I would, on my ride back to where I lived, I would stop at his house and he would just like bring out these records and show them to me and like play like a couple of songs real quick. And then I'd be like, oh, okay, I have to get home. So he introduced me to a lot of shit. He introduced me to Circle Jerks. He introduced me to a lot of metal too. Like it was like those things kind of went hand in hand for me. Like so, like Venom and Motorhead and Circle Jerks, The Cult Electric, which is just like a rock album, but it's fucking amazing. I remember so hearing that stuff and then wanting to get more into it. And I'd be like, will you make me a tape? Please just make me a tape of this stuff. And you'd always be like, I can't, the record player's broken now, or I don't have any tapes or something. But then he told me that there was a show at some space in some town that I didn't even know of yet. But he was like, so it's in this town called Elgin, and Naked Ray Gun is playing there. And I was like, all right, let's go. So this was like, I want to say it was winter of 91 or something like that. I think I was a senior in high school, and I went to see, so it was at this club called Number One Soul in Elgin. And it was, while we were driving there, he was telling me shit like, now be careful because punks in the circle pit, they have razor blades and they're going to cut you when you go through this. So he's like scared, trying to scare me before we got there. And it was scary and it was exciting. And so I wanted to keep doing it after that. But that was my first experience. And I don't remember, there were a couple of openers. And one of the opening bands was this guy who ended up later on being like promoting a lot of shows at the Fireside Bowl in Chicago, which was a place where I went all the time in my 20s. There was just shows going on there every night. But his name was Brian Peterson, and he was in this band, and I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was called like Fratricide or something like that, but I don't remember. But it was just awesome to be around people where I was just like, I didn't know anyone except for my friend there, and it was like violent and noisy, and it was just awesome. And I kept wanting to do that after that. So then the next thing that I went to was, and I went to this one on my own. So after that, I'll say this, after that show, I would always go to the record store in DeKalb, Record Revolution, and I would always look at flyers that were there for shows that were coming up, and I'd be like, oh, I want to go see Snail Boy or whatever was playing around at like the VFW hall, and I was always like, oh, but I'm scared to go there by myself. I don't know what's going to happen. And then I met, I don't know if I knew him yet. I may have met him a little after this time, but I went to see Face Value and Iceburn play at this VFW hall summer of 91. So I had just finished high school. And I think around that time I met my friend Joe, who has been in the Repos, and I've played in other bands with for a long time. And he was like 14 years old, and he was like the promoter. Like he set up the show.
Shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so I kept just looking for that, just going for an experience where it was like something crazy is going to happen. And I don't know if you're a fan of Face Value, but Face Value at this time, they're from Cleveland. Tony Erba, who's one of the greatest frontmen of all time, he's wearing, at the show, he's wearing a mesh, like cropped shirt. He's got bleach blonde hair. So he looks like, and he's not like in shape or anything. So he looks like this weirdo, like youth crew burnout dude. And then all the guys who are in the band are wearing like fucking Zubaz pants and no shirts and mullets and stuff. They just look like criminals. And I was like, yeah, I want some more of this.
So I mean, through all these experiences, where does like a Big Bill concert come from? Like someplace, you know, that ends up having like on purpose fireworks or flames or anything like how does that come in, and where was that as exciting as something, you know, like these smaller shows?
I think the biggest show that I went to was seeing like Fugazi in Chicago at the Aragon Ballroom.
Damn.
And that was a lot of people. And it was cool to see Ian MacKaye because I was like such a huge Minor Threat fan. And it was cool that it was like, so at this show, I read about this somewhere else, and then it sparked my memory. So I guess that at that show, they wanted to separate the over 21 from the under 21. And they wanted to put up these like big metal bars. And Fugazi, and they were like, we're going to do that to separate these two sides. Like, I go on this side, you go on this side. But Fugazi didn't like the idea of just having these big metal, like, gates separating. So they asked the venue to tie balloons, colorful balloons, all along. So they at least looked nice. And so the venue did.
Oh, my God. They did?
Yeah. Oh, they did it, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. Dang. I mean, it just seems like such a visual trying to think of that like actually being a thing, to where if somebody like was telling me that didn't actually firsthand experience it, like I don't know if I believe that.
Yeah, so that was like fireworks to me.
Okay. So from from these experiences, where do you take on your first instrument as far as trying to kind of learn and trying to get your way into making something of this sort?
So yeah, I only played like in high school. I played saxophone, and so I was like, well, I can't be in a punk band playing saxophone. I have to do something. And I figured bass would be the easiest because there are two fewer strings on a bass than a guitar.
Yeah. Okay.
So I bought this really cheap bass from this guitar store that was in DeKalb called Axe in Hand. It was like, I want to say probably $150, and it was terrible bass. But as a side note, at one point, I sold that bass to John Aarons, I was in Charles Bronson with, and he played that bass, but he sanded the finish completely off of it and like colored it in with crayons, like put like big X's on it, like Bikini Kill stickers and stuff. So that bass ended up being used, but it was just, I think for a long time, it seemed like a long time anyway, I was trying to get people that I already knew to play the kind of music that I wanted to play, that I was hearing. And most of my friends who could play instruments were just like not into it. So there was a lot of like false starts with doing stuff.
Okay.
Like we'd try to practice, and it would be like we'd try to write songs and we didn't know what we were doing. It was fun to do it though. Nobody had like loud amps. It was all like out of shitty little like 50-watt amps and stuff. Probably 30. Yeah. So it was hard to do. And then all of a sudden it just like clicked after a while. So I was hanging around with Joe and Craig, who are both in Repos. Mm-hmm. Craig's the drummer. Craig and Joe were in a band called Meshuggahs, in a punk band, and they were just an awesome local DeKalb punk band. They just played like basements and stuff. And they just had this fucking awesome energy. Like, it wasn't hardcore because it's like not everything that I was interested in was just hardcore. Like I was listening to all different kinds of stuff. So they were like just a really cool melodic punk band. They just had a lot of like raw energy. And they were playing shows for a while, and I was hanging around with those guys a lot. And then they were moving from DeKalb to somewhere else, and they were like, "Do you want to play bass?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to play bass." So that was like the first band, and one of the first shows that I played with them. Like I didn't even know how to play with a pick yet when I was playing bass. Like I played like with my thumb, like picking it, which was what a fucking goofy way to play bass. Like I don't know what I was doing, but the more I practiced with them, the better I got at it. And then I played with them it seems like it was a long time, but when you're young, like 6 or 8 months seems like a really long time.
Right.
And I just like got bored with it. And I think Craig and I went to DeKalb, and I think that might've been the first time that I had met Mark McCoy. He had just started going to school there. And so Craig and Mark and Ebro and I don't remember who else it was. This kid named Joel, maybe John Aarons. I don't remember. But we did this like project, like we were just hanging out for a day, and we just like recorded this project called Neil Blender Alliance. That was just like fast, crazy hardcore. Okay. And we had a few practices doing that, and then I was moving back to DeKalb, and so I'd been hanging out with Mark a lot more, and we were like skating together, just hanging out. Mark was just like super high energy, like was somebody who was getting shit done, and like was just like, yeah, let's write these songs, let's do this. So at one point he just asked me if I wanted to start playing in Charles Bronson. I was like, yeah, totally, I'm in.
Damn. Okay. And so some of those NBA tracks ended up being Repos tracks, right? Or am I gonna misread something?
No. So yeah, Certified Cult Band was originally a song for NBA called Boneless, I think.
Okay.
So NBA, I think the Neil Blender Alliance thing was all about like skating, but there was also some like weird fantasy element of like scooping out somebody's skull and then skating inside. So it was just weird stuff. It was fun, but yeah, one of the songs that we did for NBA ended up being Charles Bronson's song. It was fucking Drunken Uncle, which is on
okay.
Which is, I think that's on the split with Spaz. And then Certified Cult Band was another NBA song, and that was on the first Repos album. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, none of the lyrics or anything, that was all changed, but I think that just the songs, the
music of it.
Yeah, the music.
Okay. So as far as playing your first show, you have the excitement of going and seeing, maybe some of the violence in the crowds and just that whole thing. How does it portray actually getting up and playing in front of somebody? Were you nervous? Was it something that, you had to really kind of practice a bunch beforehand? How did that first show go for you?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. The first show that I played with Meshuggahs was at this cool venue that was in Homewood, Illinois, which is like a south suburb. There was a record store called Record Swap, and then there was a venue attached to it called Off the Alley. And I would go to a lot of shows there, but there was a stage, and it was, like a pretty decent height stage, probably like a 4-foot high stage, which was scary to be up there and everyone's watching you on a stage. Yeah. But I got used to it pretty quickly. And the thing that at that time at least, that I thought about being in a punk band was like, well, if I fuck up a little bit, it's okay. It's a punk band.
That's honestly, like, that's the biggest pitching point to anybody who's ever talking about starting a band. They're like, well, I don't know, we're kind of thinking about doing something punk. It's like, well, dude, if you fuck up, nobody's really going to notice.
No.
That's the best part. You can get up there and get sloppy, and it might even just be part of the show. Like, you just run with it. What about your first time recording? So I'm taking it's going to be was that with Meshuggahs then?
Yeah, I think so. Yep, it was. So we went to this studio that was in Indiana that was called Sonic Iguana. And I think we recorded like 4 songs for a 7-inch or something, and like 3 of the songs were a breeze. It was easy, and then Craig wrote one song that was just like I couldn't get, so he's just like, I'll just record the bass for it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I was at that stage where I was just like, I just can't do it. I just don't know how to do it.
Okay. Was that something you had to end up like playing live to where you're like, fuck, I don't know what I'm gonna do here, but
yeah, I figured it out. It just took more practice. So it was like, it was the immediacy of getting something recorded. Like, we have these songs, somebody wants to put it out, let's get it recorded and go. But yeah, then I figured it out just fine.
Got it. Okay. What about traveling out of town? So you have those comforts of maybe seeing some familiar faces, spots that you've been to, but your first experience, leaving out and being somewhere, maybe even on a tour. How does that go? How'd that treat you?
Pretty good. Yeah. Like, touring has always been fun, or just really going out of town. I haven't done a whole lot of touring throughout the years. I did for a couple of years when I was playing bass with Das Oath, and that was awesome being on tour. Also tough, but it was mostly just like weekend out of town things, where it's just like you go out of town for a Saturday night and then drive back or something. I remember going to like Milwaukee with Charles Bronson, and we just went and played the show and then left. That's it. We're done. Okay. That was cool.
What about, and this is going to change, I would assume, from bass, to also doing vocals, but a pre-show ritual or something that, just kind of gets you a little bit comfortable for going up and playing. Has there been anything that you have that, just kind of centers you, or that, helps you for preparing to play live?
No. No, I would usually just be really anxious about it before it would happen. And then, as I got a little bit older, I would just like have a couple of beers or something, and I just felt relaxed.
Okay. I almost spit this shit out. I love that. Yeah, that's great. It doesn't always have to be like some sort of like big glamorous thing. Like that's awesome and appreciated, you know, just as far as hearing everybody's approach to shit. But yeah, I mean, you know, obviously from earlier days, it gets a little bit tougher trying to, you know, get a drink or something like that. But a beer or a nice, you know, like there was a little while there where it was like a shot of Jameson or a shot of some sort of whiskey and then like a beer. And then it's like, all right, even, you know, playing field, and we're going to get out there and have some fun. So sweet. I love that. With the Repos, now you have there's been a couple of different write-ups. There's one that's on Youth Attack's site that's sick. That's awesome. You guys all kind of going through with Craig talking, everybody having, you know, their you know, kind of memories of some of the earlier records. That was awesome. I love. I wanted to kind of jump off of that into Poser and kind of, you know, digging into, you know, like returning into that record and, you know, maybe after a couple years later and starting off with the cover art. So we have the cover art that's, you know, absolutely amazing. I've talked about it time and time again on the show. But then also the test presses with my man, you know, kind of looking stage right there. What goes behind this cover art? What was there that ended up making this?
Okay. So, when I wrote the lyrics for that song, so Mark initially came up with the idea of Poser being the title because we were Repos for a while, and then we stopped playing, and when we reformed, we were Ropes, and then Poser is just moving those letters around. Right?
Okay, yeah.
So Mark came up with that idea, and then so I wanted to write a song called Poser, and I was like, well, like I was, you know, as somebody who's an adult already, like, what do I think when I think of a poser? I'm not going to say that somebody else is a poser, so I'm going to say that I'm a poser. So at the time I had moved to Grand Rapids, and I was living someplace where I felt like I was out of place, where the people all around me were all very well-to-do, and I'm a house painter. I'm a blue-collar guy. I was just renting this townhouse or this duplex or whatever. So I sort of just thought of the idea of my neighbors looking at me as a poser, that I don't belong there. So the idea was like I'm out mowing the lawn and my neighbors are looking at me judging me. And so I came up with that idea of that's what it was. So Joe and Craig sort of acted that out, and our friend Ryan, who's an awesome photographer, went to Joe's house, and they sort of like reenacted this idea that I had of what the song was supposed to be.
Oh God, that's awesome. And I was going to kind of touch on the track too, so that's even better. I mean, still, you know, there's different times where I talk about striking covers, and I just remember seeing that cover and being familiar with Repos and knowing the band, and my buddy Damien, who you also know Abuser and all this, showing me that cover of that record, and I'm like, what? Like, so awesome. Absolutely. So, I mean, as far as that, you know, like with working with the guys, you know, and it being, you know, a little bit of space from the last time that you worked on, you know, writing or recording new stuff, you know, what came new with that process? You know, was there anything, you know, where you ended up having to come back and record some stuff like previous times and using multiple vocal tracks, or how did this process go on the record?
So with this one, Joe and Craig and Andrew wrote all of the music, which was different from what we've been doing in the past. So they they wrote everything, and then I had to write lyrics for it. In the past, on Hearts and Heads Explodes and the first album, we all kind of did it as a collaboration. So that was a difference. So it was like I was already living in Michigan. They were all in Chicago, and they were like, we're going to write songs for an album. So I had way less of a hand in how the direction of the songs were going to go. Mm-hmm. Where before, when we were all working together, I was, we'd all like bounce ideas off of each other, and I like what they came up with, but it just felt like I was a little bit more disconnected from it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. And with that, and almost kind of a silliness that I wanted to touch on with the absolutely sick artwork. Was there anything that you noticed as far as in the punk community that there was a huge downfall in mowing lawns, you know, after this record came out?
Yeah.
Just driving by friends' houses and be like, boy, nobody wants to be a poser.
Yeah.
So sick. I love it. It was just one of those things that I've had in the back of my mind since seeing that cover, and I really wanted to toss that out there just because I thought it was so stupid. But you know, for whatever reason, you know, like how people take themselves so seriously, or take, you know, images or different things, you know, where it's like,
yeah,
just have fun, dude. Like that's the sickest thing.
Yeah.
Even with Hearts and Heads Explode, the cover art of that, you know, being so sick, and then having the ghost, but then you turn around the record and my man's just kind of shrugging. It's like, what more can you ask? Like that's the type of stuff that is like tongue in cheek and fun, that I appreciate about a band, you know, kind of going in something and taking themselves seriously, and you know, even with like with our band, I remember earlier conversations being in Prison Suicide and with Damien and such, and us kind of talking about different things and mentioning you and mentioning the Repos, and like, hey, let's get up there, not say shit between songs, play and leave.
Yeah.
And dude, that was a direct like rip from you guys. Like I wholeheartedly like appreciate and love, you know, that, but loving that about the band too, and loving that about, you know, you guys just getting up, doing the fucking thing and getting it done. And was there anything that ever inspired you other than just the fact of like jumping up and being like, let's do what we have to do and then leave?
Yeah, I think that, you know, so all of us sort of were going to a lot of shows in the 90s where there was a lot of bands that had a lot to say in between songs, and it seemed like it slowed down the momentum. And of course, I know that that's a part of punk and hardcore, like to have something to say, but I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to just play songs, and we all agreed that that would be the best way to do it. We thought it would be fun to play 10 songs in 7 minutes. Like that's what's interesting to us. So it wasn't like a statement against what other people were doing. It was just like, this is how we want to be remembered, is that we play fast, short songs and we're done. And we don't say anything. There's no gap in between the songs. There's no like tuning your guitar. Just fucking blast through all the songs and be done.
So sick. I mean, and obviously, you know, like it goes to say that there's the statement in like not saying anything. You know, there's something where you go up and you are deliberately letting everybody know how you feel, and then going up and not saying a thing is like, oh, well, I wonder what these guys have to say, you know, outside of this, or what kind of, so yeah. I love that. So there's been mention as far as, you know, writing songs or writing lyrics based off of short stories and different things, or even images that somebody else has like drawn up as far as for inspiration. What comes to mind, or, you know, even for more recently with like Poser, as far as short stories did you draw from as far as for lyrics?
Let me think about for Poser. So I would say for most of Poser, it was just ideas that I came up with, and I don't. They could have come from other places, but I can't say that they directly came from something. So whatever I'm reading at the time, whatever I'm listening to, I do remember. Here's one thing that I remember from that album is the song "Still Ain't High" was like a misheard lyric that I heard from a Bob Seger song. Where it's, I think, I don't know what he says. I always hear it as "still ain't high," and I was like, that's not what he's saying. So I'm going to write that down. So I wrote that down, and then it just went from there. So it's just like pulling from just things that are around me, and just like thinking of a way to, I don't know, put my own spin on it, I guess.
Oh, okay. I mean, and even like from my own spin, something that was kind of weird and something I was even talking about today was Lost Path into Hotel Caledonia. I always thought that was one full track until it was literally probably a few days ago that I'm listening, and I realized that it was two separate things. I'm like, shit, Lost Path is pretty quick.
Yeah, it's a quick one.
I thought it was like, you know, just like a kind of an abrupt stop into a different, or into like a secondary part, but such a sick, you know, like couple of tracks that was like something that you know, was kind of a mishear too as well. But then the old Hotel Caledonia, like how, you know, I think that the answer is obvious, but naming that bad boy, what goes into that?
So I had around the time that I was writing lyrics for that for Poser, I was doing some new construction work down around like Middleville, Caledonia area, and I was I was pretty unfamiliar with that area driving from Grand Rapids. It was new to me. And so I was like, Motel Caledonia is like Hotel California. So I'm gonna write my version of Hotel California and call it Motel Caledonia.
I mean, just as dumb as it is great.
It is dumb. It's dumb, and that's an important thing for writing lyrics. It has to be kind of dumb. Don't get too serious.
God, I appreciate that. I love it. So as far as going from there, Goodbye World, I wanted to talk that, and that being such a ripping record, and At Death's Door still constantly, I want to say spinning, but more so playing. If I'm playing drums or practicing or whatever. Yeah. Such a sick record, man. How does this band come involved? Obviously, you knowing Mark, for years, but having John and James. Where is everybody kind of coming in, together as far as writing this bad boy, and how does the writing start for this?
So I only know where I came in. So I think that entire record was written, and then they asked me to do vocals, and of course I listened to the music, and I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll totally do it. And so that all sort of came together. Mark and I met in at Will's place, Dead Air in Amherst, and he and I both had lyrics, and we've worked together to make the lyrics fit into songs, and just tore into it.
Okay.
Got the lyrics done for that.
Now,
got the vocals all finished.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was trying to cut you off.
I didn't have anything more to say.
Okay. Now, as far as the band name, and maybe this was already something that was conjured up, but I had kind of noticed, you had mentioned before, as far as with Meshuggahs, you had Shit City and Right City. Repos had Goodbye City. Was Goodbye World even further reiteration of this as far as that realm?
No, it's not. But I like that you picked up the Goodbye City with the Right City and Shit City, because that was directly influenced by Meshuggahs. And that Meshuggahs album, I didn't have anything to do with that. I was just influenced by their song titles.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I still maintained friendship with those guys. And then, of course, I was doing Repos with Craig and Joe from Meshuggahs. And I think that I was looking at Craig's lyrics while I was working on lyrics, and I was like, oh, I have an idea for a title. But yeah, Goodbye World Mark came up with the name, as far as I know, and I think that he didn't just say this is the name. I think that he introduced it to everyone and said, what do you think of this as a name for a band? And I said, I think it's fucking great.
Yeah. Say no more. So did anything change? Because I know, and not to put out anything that that you're not comfortable with or saying or anything, but there was a post not too long ago about you guys writing and recording a second record. Mm-hmm. Did anything change as far as the approach to this? Obviously, yourself being a little bit more involved with the band at the first point, having all the music done, but writing wise or anything like that, or was there anything did you guys physically meet up at any point writing?
So I still haven't physically met up with anyone else in the band except for Mark.
Sick. Okay.
And so as far as the music is going with Goodbye World, I wouldn't even know how to give any input. It's what they're doing is so perfect and so out of what I understand as far as writing music goes that I wouldn't know how to do it. So I give them just full reign to do whatever they're going to do. And they aren't even asking for my permission. Just they're going to do what they're going to do, and then I have to put vocals to it.
Right.
Which is great.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything as far as the second record? Is there anything, any ideas? Is it something that, possibly this next year, or anything that you can say revolve on that?
It's in the works.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and like I say, I don't want to push anything further, just didn't know as far as if there was so. Awesome. I'm super excited for it. I can't wait. If it's, you know, even if it's another 7 minutes of music on an LP, I'm ready. So next up, death dedication. So, you know, myself, probably within the last couple of years, you know, just being introduced to harsh noise as a genre. How do you end up coming upon this? How does this get introduced to you?
So once I moved to Grand Rapids, I started hanging out with some people around here. My friend Ian and Brandon, who so I was aware of noise like since the 90s. I just didn't understand what it was. And then when I started hanging out with these guys who knew how to make noise, I was like, I'm interested in learning how to do that because, for one, I wanted to be able to do something that I could do completely on my own, that I didn't need a band to do things with.
Okay.
And I wanted to learn something new just to like keep my brain active. And I thought that, like, you know, it's like learning a new instrument. It's learning a new way of creating sound. And listening to harsh noise is like hearing all of the best, like, death metal and like fast hardcore, like all mixed together in a weird way. Like it gives me this weird charge listening to it. And I was like, I want to learn how to do this. I want to figure this out. And so when I started doing that project, I decided also that I wasn't going to be a perfectionist. I wasn't going to say, I'm going to wait until I get really good at doing this, and then I'm going to start releasing stuff. I decided that I wanted to sort of make little portraits of my progress and then also what was going on in my life. So every release like has some like personal touch on it where when I look at it, I can say, oh, I know what was going on. And then I can sort of hear my progress too as I'm going and listening through the tapes through the years. So I've been doing that a little over 7 years now, which is like, if you think about the lifespan of a band, like that's a long time already, but it doesn't seem that long for doing, you know, abstract, harsh noise. It seems like I'm still figuring stuff out.
So within those earlier days of, you know, like kind of getting your first setup, where, you know, what does something like that look like as opposed to even a couple of years later and different things that you were introducing as far as, you know, what you would have on the table with you?
So both Ian and Brandon were great in helping with this because they said very little about what I should have as far as gear. They just kind of pushed me to figure things out and experiment. So I was like experimenting with tapes. So I would record just like sounds, and then I would, you know, distort those and use delay and strange things just to warp those sounds. And I still do a lot of that kind of thing, but yeah, I got into making tape loops. So like physical tape loops where you take a cassette and you take the tape and you cut it so that it just fits, so it makes like a 3-second loop, and recording stuff on that and then layering those on top of each other. So when you're playing them all together, it's just like creating this strange sound. And like, so recording sounds of like crunching metal and just like weird sounds in nature and just putting them all together so that it create this sort of like chaos.
And having something like a construction job or something like that, you know, every once in a while, you're like, Aaron, what are you doing? You're like just down with your phone or something, recording.
Oh yeah,
it's a couple minutes, dude. I'm allowed a break. Get off my ass.
Yeah, yeah. On some release, I remember there were like plumbers that, so it was in this new construction area where it was like there were no other houses around, so they had to do all kinds of work. So they're just like down in the basement, like you just hear this like rattling where they're like sawing through the foundation. And it's just like shaking the whole house. I just like took out my recorder and just set it and just recorded for 10 minutes. And then, yeah, I used them.
Was that just like, that is just a release, like just that, or was it like adding like reverb and other things to it?
Yeah, so that was mixed with a lot of other stuff too. But yeah, I think on some release that there was a section of that, like maybe 5 seconds, where it's just that raw sound too.
Oh, damn. Okay. I was gonna say that'd be like an interesting approach as far as like somebody thinking like, God, how did, trying to wrap their brain around it. It's like, yo, I literally sat my recorder down by the fucking wall getting sawed. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, once you start thinking about how like things sound, you're more likely to just like want to just record everything around you, because there's just so many sounds going on all the time. And when you think about it as like, what could I put together to make like a menacing, strange, beautiful thing? Well, just listen to the things that are around you and just record and like figure it out from there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty easy to just take a recording and filter it through whatever to make something cool. But it's just a matter of like, so there's, the idea that you're going to do some sort of composition while you're doing it, or are you just going to do like just freestyle? Like, so it just depends on what your approach is to like playing noise.
Yeah. Okay. But what have been some things as far as, playing live shows? I've seen, or I guess even like through those years, how many times have you played live, and have you, taken part in shows?
I played a lot of live noise shows. I played my first one around September of 2015, and then so there used to be a lot more going on in Grand Rapids for a while, and then there was like a lull for a long time, and now it seems like there's a little bit more going on. But I used to go to Ohio a lot to play noise.
Oh, okay.
It seems like a decent driving distance, and made friends there, and but yeah, the first time that I played noise live, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Like, Brandon was setting up this show. We used to have this space over on Madison that no longer exists, but Brandon was setting up a show, and he was like, okay, I think you're ready to play a gig. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get ready. And he gave me like a month's notice. And then like a couple days before, I was like, I'm not going to do it. I don't think I'm ready to it. He's like, oh no, you're going to do it. So him just being like, just get up and do it, like made it easier for me. Cause I think that I may have been like, no, I just can't do it yet. But he just said, just do it. And I was like sweating while I was like playing, and it wasn't hot out. I was just having flop sweat. But it ended up being fine. Ian, my friend Ian, like he was like, I'll do something with you while we're doing that, while you're performing, so you don't have to be there by yourself. So he helped me get through it. And then Ian's been like my best collaborator for a long time. Like, we do Infectants together. Mm-hmm. We did a whole bunch of my early releases were like splits with Ian and his project Apostate. Like, we just did a bunch of stuff together, and we'd been doing stuff for so much together. I was like, we should just call our project something when we're collaborating, and that's when we started just doing Infectants.
Okay. Yeah. Now, do you like, along with with physical elements? I've seen different things from your shows, but what pedals are what are like pedals that you're bringing along for a live show? Something that's like necessary.
Distortion.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So lots of distortion.
Okay. Having as much as you can on hand.
Yeah. So I'll just say one pedal that I always use is a pedal that I bought when I started playing bass with Das Oath. When I went to Europe the first time to tour, I had not met Yaron and Marcel, who was the guitar player and the drummer. I just knew Mark, and he was going to meet me over there later. I went there like a few days early to start rehearsing. And when I got there, they were like, you need this pedal for when you're playing bass, because this is what Nate, our last bass player, was using. And I was like, okay. So I just bought this bass overdrive pedal, and I still have that same pedal. And so I also use that in my noise too. So I've had that pedal for like 20 years.
Okay. That's awesome. No, I mean, it's sick. And, you know, like I appreciate, you know, anything, you know, from rock and roll, you know, to hip hop, to noise, to anything that, you know, that is musical, and somebody that's, you know, like taking the time to create and kind of sitting down with, you know, and I wanted to kind of, you know, touch on, if you could, the track that you ended up submitting for the comp. And I know it stands for something. What went into, you know, the titling of the track there?
Oh, so yeah, so it ended up just being like the initials on there,
Yeah.
right? On the tape.
Yeah.
And I think that it was just because I sent you a file and that was just like abbreviated on there, and I just didn't say anything. I just sent it without any text involved. But
there wasn't
so it
wasn't even like abbreviations. Like, it was just spelled out, and I'm like scouring through like languages of like, what the fuck does this say?
So let's see. It was like SITAOCW. Okay, yeah. So that was Sex in the Age of Cheap Whiskey.
Yes, that's awesome. I love it. I love it. And any story behind the title of that?
Well, sex on cheap
Any
whiskey
that you
is
can
either
say right now.
the most wild, amazing thing, or it's a total flop. So there's those two things that it could be. And that's what I'm presenting. The track. It could either be the most amazing thing or just a terrible failing thing.
I love that. And I think it's also, too, like, it's something where it's like when you're hearing the track and you're hearing it kind of amongst like the compilation, because I have yourself, I have Stomach. There's one other noise track that's on there, too, you know, where I've had a couple people that are like, whoa, I was not anticipating, you know, the kind of track before, the track after, and then having the Death Dedication track, you know, like who is this? I'm like, oh man, you just got to look into it, dude. You got to find out. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. And you know, like I say too, and like I mentioned earlier, I really do appreciate the help with that, and you know, including something on here. It's fucking awesome, man. It's been so sick.
Do you still have any of those tapes? I want to get a couple copies.
Yeah, I kept. Cool. I think I had. I set aside, I think, 4 or 5. Cool. So I have those, and you know, whenever we meet up for a show or something, I'll get those to you for sure. Or even I can message you and get you something there too. But yeah, I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the time today too. This has been so sick, and
yeah, man, great talking.
Really excited for Goodbye World for sure, and can't wait to see what's coming up with that.
Awesome.
Do you have anything else as far as musically? Anything that maybe you've recently started? Anything that you kind of have coming up as far as show wise?
No. Just look out for any new Goodbye World, Death Dedication. I'm doing a new project. I'm doing a new band with a couple of guys that we've been rehearsing now for, I don't know, a couple of months, and it is way different than other things that I've done so far.
Wow.
It's super down-tuned, heavy, intricate riffs. It's fun doing it. I don't know when we'll be ready to play out, but we have like 4 songs that we've been working on for a while now. So that's something to look out for.
Awesome.
I think I have some recordings to do for Death Dedication that'll probably come out around summertime. More Goodbye World stuff coming up for sure. I'm doing there's another noise project that I'm doing with my friend Charlie that's called Perfected Grave Vault, that we have a couple of tapes out, and there's more to come of that too.
Sick. So awesome. I appreciate hearing all this stuff, dude. I mean, you put out absolutely solid shit, whatever you're doing, and whatever this new project is as well. Very excited, man. I can't wait to see what's to come, dude, for sure. It's awesome.
Thanks.
Well, let me say, honestly, once again, I appreciate the time. I appreciate that we finally got this, kind of wrestled down to a time that was comfortable for both of us and for schedules. So anybody that's been watching, I'll have this edited and I'll have it up on YouTube within like the next month here, and post it all on here too, and promote it. So Yeah. Thank you very much for the time, man. This has been awesome.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Take care. Have a good night, man. See ya.
You too.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.